Welcome to the Hard Truth Podcast. This is Jeremy Fouts, and as always, here on the podcast, we are bringing you value, and we have a special guest, a Montana rancher, Jim Riley, who's also an author, a speaker, business coach. But the most important part, he's involved in this community and giving back to others. And Jim, that's something I really like about what you're doing. You're going to talk about values and different things, and we definitely totally align with the way we approach life. And that's a lot of the things that people don't understand. They want to complain about politics. They want to complain about their community. They want to complain about all these different things, but they're not doing anything in order to make a difference in not only their life, but their community and in others. So thank you for being on the Hard Truth Podcast. Let's go. Jim Riley, give us a little bit of background before we get into the podcast, a little bit more who you are, what you stand for, and thank you again for being on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I was a little out of practice, so it was good to get the call, taking a little hiatus from my own show. I got so busy ranching and politicking out here. So happy to be here. Again, I appreciate what you do and what you stand for. I obviously did some research before jumped on this call. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be aligned with other men in this country, knowing that there's more of us out there trying to, I don't want to say fight the good fight, but at least standing up for a cause. And I think the most important thing is generating action from our words and our beliefs. Generating action. There's not enough of that. And you kind of touched on that a little bit. But to give you some background about myself, I'll try to give you the condensed version. I've been fairly complex most of my life. I started working when I was 13. I worked for my grandfather in the restaurant business. And by the time I was 16, I got pretty good at it. And I started working for a company you'll be familiar with in your neck of the woods now, is In-N-Out Burger.
Oh, yeah.
Spent a lot of years there, 12 years, left there in my mid-20s as their most successful manager. Was the first guy to sell 1 million hamburgers in one of their restaurants in a single location. But more importantly, that's where I learned between there and my grandfather, the values of working hard. You got time to lean, you got time to clean, treat people well, give good customer service, right? Think beyond, what's in front of you type things. And I carried that skill set throughout my life. And when I left In-N-Out Burger, there was a really critical moment for me. And like I said, I'm going to give you the abbreviated version. You can come back to whatever you want if it resonates. But I'm hoping this part resonates with your listeners. Is the story that I tell often is I was doing really well. Made $160,000 a year at 26 years old at In-N-Out Burger in the 90s. That was pretty good money. I realized I was living for all the wrong reasons. And where I made that realization was I went on a missions trip out of Newport Beach down to Baja, Mexico. We hit 5 or 6 orphanages in a day. We had 2 vans full of people and supplies. And we spent, 16 hours on the road and got back at midnight and the whole bit. And I went to the organizer. His name was Tano. I said, "Hey, what was our budget for this?" That felt pretty awesome. He goes, "Oh, about $5,000. I said, "Well, how long is this stuff going to last those kids?" He says, "Well, some of them it's going to last 2 months or more." Like these were critical supplies. And I was blown away by that. I was disappointed in myself. And this is a pivotal point for everybody to understand. The weekend before, I was in California at the time. I'd spent $5,000 skiing at Mammoth one weekend. Yeah. One weekend, $5,000. Had to have new gear, nice, accommodations and the best food and all that stuff. And I realized how selfish I'd been. And fortunately for me, I learned that lesson at 26. And I realized that same $5,000 is going to last these kids a couple months. So I took a mental shift, and I literally left In-N-Out Burger within 6 months and moved to Lake Tahoe to kind of reset my being. And right. It's interesting is God opens doors for us, and it's up to us to walk through them. And I wound up going up there with the notion I'd take a minimum wage job, literally. And I got a job at the Harvey's Casino Buffet. All right. Within a day, they promoted me to supervisor. They realized I had a little bit of talent. So I worked there for a couple months. And then I became a VIP host for the casino portion of it, all the while not being concerned about making money, but about making real connections and giving back to people and building real relationships and not focus on money at all. I wound up taking a job at ski resort, became a food and beverage director at Sierra Tahoe Ski Resort. I did a Saturday morning TV show for a couple years through them on local TV. and wound up putting me back in Southern California a few years after that, and landed a job as the first marketing employee of Kettle One Vodka. And what's interesting about that, because you're thinking, wow, alcohol, probably big bucks as the vice president. I managed our budget for marketing, which was donating to charitable organizations around the country. And
Mm.
so I had an over $2 million budget to donate to charities through my position. And all the while we were promoting the brand, but it allowed me to have that give back philosophy. From there, I was able to raise $12 million during the 2007-2008 financial crisis, launched my own tequila company, Azuña Tequila, with great people like Bill Walton. Former Bill Walton passed away
Right.
last year, as well as Peter Jacobson, who's on the senior tour, and he's an announcer for the Golf Channel. I did that until 2017, was able to sell, and I started my consulting coaching business back then, and that's what I still do today. Now, I've got several other components of things that I've done along the way, which are fun to dig into, and I'll throw them out there, and you can decide if we want to go back. But I race cars professionally for Ford Motor Company. I did the Baja 1000, basically off-road vehicles. Did that for 12 years. Won the Baja 1000 3 times. I also went off to, and I started just before your age. Not sure if you said your age on air yet, but when I was 46, I started racing Spartan races competitively around the country. I culminated that entire career just before COVID by getting third in the world for men over 50, running the Ultra Championships in Iceland, and moved my family to Montana. I'm a rancher out here. I wrote a book recently called The Freedom to Say Yes. And I'm trying to help as many people as possible and give back as much as possible. And some of my businesses do that today, as well as what we're doing here today. So that's the quick overview. We can dig in anywhere you want, Jeremy.
Yeah, well, let's start about talking about the book Freedom to Say Yes. I have not received it yet. I actually got one coming my way and cannot wait to read it. But the writing the book, the name just really gets my attention. Freedom to Say Yes. Give us a little bit more insight about that, and then we'll jump into some other topics.
Well, it was interesting because when I was working with Bill Walton, and we were pretty intimate with our business dealings with the Azuña Tequila, despite his heavy announcing schedule of all the basketball games. But he would always go to me, Jim, you're always saying yes to people. You're always saying yes to people. I said, Bill, it's hard for me to say no just because I want to help and be able to do whatever I can, right, to further not only our business, but whatever their needs are. And so that stuck with me. And I realized I'm not afraid to say yes. And I learned that at an early age. Back in the 80s, I had the opportunity to see Mark Victor Hansen speak, who was the co-author for Chicken Soup for the Soul with Jack Campbell. And he said something that stuck with me, and that was, what you believe is what you will achieve. And that's in the book. And the reason why that's so important to me is because it changed my mental thinking from being somewhat poor as a child, living with my single mom. And we'd get handouts from the church and stuff like that. And as I got older, I thought it's got to be better, right? And I know that's a little bit of a cliche, but when I heard that line, I always believed that I could do more and be more, right? So
Yeah.
that culminated into me saying yes my entire life. And look, there is a time and a place to say no, for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But the book has 16 business stories with 16 lessons to go with those stories about saying yes, how you can say yes, and the benefits oftentimes by saying yes for the right reasons.
Right. I know you mentioned a few minutes ago when you moved to Tahoe, you was all about, not finding the highest paying job, but what can you do to bring service and to get yourself in a situation where you're making real relationships. That's something I've been teaching for years. I mean, obviously I made my millions in a sales business, nutrition, and training leaders over and over. I'm like, man, don't try to get the sale just for what it'll do for you. you know you've got to have the mindset that you're going to bring value to others and expect nothing in return. How did you grasp that concept at such a young age, and how valuable has that been in all of your accomplishments of just focusing on building real relationships?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I appreciate you pointing out again the age in which I had that understanding. And I don't think if it wasn't for the place that I was in mentally, as much money as I had, I mean, that's a lot of money for a 26-year-old, especially in the 90s, probably equivalent of a couple 100,000 now, maybe
Oh yeah.
300 now. But I wasn't happy. I've been from a faith perspective, I've been a Christian since I was 5 years old, but it doesn't mean my life is perfect, right?
Right.
I was successful in business, still doesn't mean my life is perfect. I wasn't happy. Wasn't happy with my wife, my marriage, who I was, the things I was doing. And I was buying stuff to accommodate for that. Again, it's almost a cliche because we hear that, but the reality is that is the truth. You
Right.
cannot buy that happiness. And when I saw the benefits of being involved with those orphanages, and by the way, one of my companies donates to those orphanages to this day. I've never forgotten about them. But the value that I saw there really broke my heart, to be honest with you. And so when I made that move to Tahoe, money was the last thought. And literally, I remember moving there going, I'm going to take a minimum wage job or whatever's out there, because it's not about the money. It's about establishing and getting my head straight, right? How can we give back? How can we build better relationships? And like I suggested earlier, God opens doors. It's up to us to walk through them. I've been so blessed my entire life, Jeremy, and it comes from that heart of giving back,
Right.
because and maybe it's too much for your listeners, but God gives back overwhelming,
Oh yeah.
and we don't give to get, right?
Right.
We make so that we can give, and God just fills our cup. And I've seen that my entire life, at least since I was 26. And it allows me to operate that way. I look at myself as a component of a river, right? So the money comes through us like the river, and it continues on to bless other people.
Right.
And it seems like the more that I'm blessing others, that river gets a little fatter and fatter and fatter. And I can try to give it away as fast as I can, right? As opposed to building your money up like a dam, and you only pull from it when you think you need it. Eventually, you're going to run out of water,
Right.
right? So, anyways, the lesson was learned in that harsh reality of the orphanages. To be honest with you,
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to ask you, I know you are big on the importance of values, and what are your values? What do you stand for? And then also you teach that basically that translates into what you're going to accomplish in your goals in
yeah,
life. And I know, being someone that's worked with people for 25 years and mentoring them, leadership, discipline, the minute that a lot of times you mention the word values and goals, their minds just kind of go blank.
yep,
And when I'm working with people over and over, I'll ask them, what are your values? What are your goals? And Jim, they honestly don't have a clue. And
yeah.
so how important is it for the audience listening today, if they're not where they want to be in life, to evaluate what truly is their values and what they stand for, and how does that translate into their success?
I'm going to give you mine so that we can have a real example, and I'm sure you have yours.
Hmm.
So mine, and I put mine in order, and I'll tell you why in a second. But it's God, family, giving back, health, time, so that I can do all those other things. And the last one, number 6, is business.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are mine in that order. So I recommend to all my clients, or anybody that I'm speaking to, anybody listening to this show, think about what your own values are and sit down with your wife, with your kids, with your girlfriend, with your parents, with your uncle, whoever it is in your life, your core circle, and sit down and go, hey, I think these are my values. And then as a family, come up with what your values are. And I'm not saying this is a 5-minute exercise. This might
Right.
take you a week, it might take you a month. What is important to you? Once you've established that, build your goals around that. Because I think Stephen Covey said it. Maybe you read the book. He talks about climbing the corporate ladder.
Oh
You
yeah.
get to the top and you realize, I climbed the wrong ladder, right?
Yeah.
Well, your values operate the same way. You don't want to reach the end of the goal here and you're not happy. And you're like, well, where did I miss out? Oh, wait, this isn't a part of my value system. And so my example I like to give people, because we're up here in Montana. It used to be affordable. Now it represents something else. But see, look, I live in Montana. uh, the economy's lower here than it is in California, especially places like Newport Beach where I grew up. You make less money up here, all those things, but my values are number one up here. I
Right.
could move back to Newport Beach and make millions of dollars again, but I would be sacrificing, you and I know this for sure, time with my family, the ability to be healthy, the ability to have time. I'd be skewing high on the business side, right? I'd be lucky if I made it to church on Sundays, definitely not on Wednesday nights too, and definitely not the Bible study. So I'd be giving away all my values to make those millions of dollars, right? So I get to the end of that finish line. I'm disappointed. What's wrong with me? I've
Yeah.
given up everything that was important to me. But instead, what I did is I took my value system and said, where can we live? And I can raise my kids in a place that we can afford. I can work less, achieve all the things that we want to do as a family, which is, by the way, homeschooling and vacation and animals and all these things, while serving the Lord. Well, here I am, Montana, right?
Right.
So that's why they're so critically important. And yes, your values will change over time, especially as you get older. They'll be different for me than they are for you, Jeremy. And they'll be different for the 20-year-old that might be listening to the show. They'll
Right.
change over time, and your goals should be adjusted accordingly. So to me, it's a critical exercise for anybody to go through it often.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something I teach everyone in my audience and have for years is we get things mixed up. We think money is going to get us all of those things to make us happy that you mentioned a few minutes ago. And I tell them, the way that the four freedoms work is we should be making money to be able to buy us back more time, to be able to invest more in the relationships, to then find our purpose and to really do what God's called us to do 100%.
Yeah.
Where we a lot of times in society, it's all about, how much money can I make to buy a bigger house, to buy these different things. I mean, I found myself, Jim, I told you on that ranch in Colorado. I mean, I had everything. I had the money in the bank, I had all the different things, but I was missing out on my purpose of making an impact on others. Now I will ranch again. I told you that a few minutes ago. I will, that's something I love to do, but my purpose right now is how can I bring back or give back as much impact in others, make a biggest, the good book just makes it real clear. The only way to true happiness is truly serving others. And that's what I fell in love with, and I continue to do. I know you said you've been to politics, building, in bringing value to your community. Give us some of the things that you are doing in your community to bring value, and what some of the things our audience can do, because as I mentioned, everyone wants to complain about the situation, but no one's, like you said, taking action.
Man, this is my favorite question, by the way, Jeremy. I do want to touch on one thing, one last point about values and goals, though. Just like you would in business, if you're starting a business, you should always work that all the way through to figure out what your exit strategy is. Okay. And know where this business is going. And even if it's a, lifelong hand down to the kid's business, you should still know that that's your exit plan. Do that same thing with your own financial goals and objectives, because you might realize you don't need to make as much money to hit the target. And by not having to make as much money, you might buy yourself some more time to be with your friends and family. And that's what we did here in Montana. And you'll see, but do that in reverse for your life as well as your business. And I think you'll see the rewards of that.
It's
So
good
Jeremy,
teaching.
I moved to Montana almost 6 years ago now, pre-COVID. And I'm not afraid to admit, I have been a conservative Christian my entire life, as I already suggested. And that relates to politics as well. And I will say up front, I vote for the man, and the values of the man are whoever aligns the closest to my constitutional and faith-based values.
Right.
Okay. And I will tell you that most often that's the Republican Party.
Right.
Then, by the way, they may not be perfect. But I was happy to support Donald Trump from day one. My wife and I happened to be on accident in the coffee shop in Trump Tower when he came down the escalator and made the announcement, because I'd done a little business with him on The Apprentice. So I was happy to see that, because I knew there was a man that was coming into politics that wasn't a politician. I also, at the same time, started getting involved, utilizing my personal skills. And this is understanding, who you are and understand what you can do. I'm a marketer by trade. So
Right.
I started helping assemblymen run for office in California. We didn't win the seat, but we ruffled a lot of feathers. And when I moved to Montana, I met with the GOP leadership here. And I said, look, I want to contribute back to my community. What's a good place to start? And he introduced me to local legislator at the time, cowboy rancher. And, we got to know each other. And I wound up helping him with his campaign. I became his campaign manager, and we won a local Senate seat. And so that was, a pure joy to be able to help him do that. It was a tough seat. We crushed it. happy about that. I also got on school board, which I felt it was my obligation as a parent and a community member. And it's
Right.
important to emphasize community member. My kids don't go to public school. My kids at the time actually went to private school and went on to just be homeschooled. But as a community member, we pay taxes into the school system, which is important to understand how your taxes are being spent. But Jeremy, more importantly, I think, is these kids need all the chance and opportunity in the world to succeed in the public system, as bad as it is, because some people don't have the choice to homeschool or private school, and they've got to be there. So I've got to give them the tools to have a fighting chance, because they're going to be our future leaders, not only in our communities, but in this country, right? So get involved in school board if you're listening and if you can, but that's why I got involved with school board. Now I've moved on from there. I actually, I run a political action committee. I've helped somebody run probably a more conservative Christian candidate for governor this last 12 months. We didn't win the primary. We did get 50,000 votes, which was a pretty good chunk of change. And I've helped over 51 school board trustees work towards getting elected in the last couple of years. And I will continue to be involved, in the politics of our state, because as you said, you can't have a voice unless you're willing to get involved.
Right.
And it's one thing to sit around and have coffee and talk about and complain about, but it's another to create and generate some action steps.
Yes.
And so I want to encourage people to create some action and not just talk about it. And there is a number of ways that you can get involved. And even if that is donating $10 a month or $20 a month, put your ego aside because you feel like, oh, they're going to know I only donated $20. It doesn't matter. Every $20 adds up. I can buy 4 yard signs with $20. That's 4 more yards that will get a sign of the politician, the person that's representing our values, because hopefully that's who you're supporting, is able to put 4 more signs out. So $20, $10, it all goes a long ways. Do something and start now, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what you were looking for, because like I said,
Oh,
this is my favorite
absolutely.
topic.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I know a lot of the audience though, Jim, they probably think, how can I get involved? Like, I live here in Prosper, Texas, and I mean, it's a large community, north of Dallas. And, what would be the first part of getting involved in learning about the city and the government politics, and how to start in that process? Because I'm just being real honest with you. I have no problem sharing my voice. I mean, I totally align with you. Trump is the guy I'm voting for. I'm proud to say that. I feel like he's not perfect, like none of us, but I feel like, number one, he's going to provide security to our country. He's God fearing. He's definitely understands business. We definitely have a whole problem with every bit of our political issues from a money standpoint. But if I'm just in a community like where I'm at, where do I even begin? Like, I wouldn't even know where to send $10 or $20 to donate. I wouldn't even know where to begin to figure out how to get on the school board, or how to support. And so I definitely can do that Googling myself, but I know you've done this for years. What would be an easy way for someone to start?
Yeah, well, pick your poison first of all, right?
Right.
So, and what I mean by that is pick what you're most passionate about, because everything that we do in our communities are influenced by the politics of that community and the votes of that community. Okay, so if you're passionate about kids and the future of those kids and where they go, the school board will be your place to play a role in, and I'll explain how you get in that involved. But you also have to remember you've got county commissioners that dictate how the counties run. What policies you're going to adopt. For example, we have here in Kalispell, the town that I live closest to, a warming center for the homeless. Okay. What that's done is created a refuge for homeless across the country to land here in our little town and disrupt all of our resources. And you might say, I don't agree with that, because all it's doing is promoting the alcoholism, the drug use, and all those other things, right? So that's a county commissioner. You might look at your city council and say, you know what, I'm more passionate about what's happening in the city itself, because, again, another good example is 2 years ago, we approved recreational marijuana in Montana. Well, that's been a disaster because city council didn't know how to handle the new policies and just opened up the floodgates. We've got a very small city here with 4 times the capita of cannabis stores. They call it the Green Mile, because there's I think 15 cannabis stores in a town that's probably got 25,000 people. I mean, so there's a lot of areas that you can get involved, and you can work your way up from there. So we got school board, we got county commissioners, we got city council. You have library boards.
Right.
I'm sure everybody's seen in the media the fight against these boys, like the books like Gender Queer
Right.
and Lawn Boy, which is pornographic materials that our young kids have access to in the libraries.
Unbelievable.
So there's a number of places that you can get involved. And here's how you pick your poison. Like I said, let's just use school board as an example. You drive by the same schools, every day on your way to work or whatever that looks like. Well, go on the school website. Okay. Smith Valley School is my school right here. I go on Smith Valley, Google. Okay. There's this. Okay. Where's the board? There's the board team. When does the board meet? Every first Tuesday of every month. Great. 6:00. I'm going to show up. Just show up. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just show up and listen. And eventually you're going to go, you know what? Maybe I need to get a little bit more involved. And if by you showing up shows that you're a community member that is concerned about what's going on in the school, or at least you want to be in the know.
Right.
And by listening, you're going to start to understand the policies. And by the way, and I spent time on the board. Boards are designed to make you feel intimidated. Okay. There's a little book. It's really little. It's called Robert's Rules. And
Right.
that's how boards operate it. Read Robert's Rules and you're going to see how a board is supposed to operate. That's how they operate. And there is rules there, but those rules intimidate people from speaking. Once you understand that there is an opportunity at every board meeting for you to speak, then you can start building the confidence. Say, I want to say something about that, right? Maybe we shouldn't have masks on our kids, right? So start learning the policies and procedures and start showing up. And if that's intimidating to you, all you got to do is go and put your butt in a seat and then leave when it's over. And at least they know that you were there. They're going to take your name down. They're going to say, oh, we had a couple more community members show up. By the way, we know when more people come to the school board meetings. And if they're not inviting you, then you're in the right spot. Because I used to invite the community. I used to thank them every time we had a board meeting. Hey, thank you for showing up. Your opinion matters. Yeah. Please, questions, come see me, right? And you can do the same thing with your county commissioners, your city council meetings. You can just show up, Yeah. And then you'll start getting your feet wet in politics. The problem with people is our egos get in the way and they want to go straight to the top, right?
Right.
I don't care about school board, city council. I don't want to do anything with library. I want to run for legislator, assemblyman, or Senate. And they want to go straight for the top. There's all kinds of great roles in between that you can provide a massive amount of value to your community just by filling those roles. We flipped our library board here. I say flipped it. We've got some good conservative people on the library board now. Those books are gone. Okay. Yeah. And they fight every day to support their decision to keep those books out. And I'll tell you how ugly it is. And that's why you need more community involvement. I showed up with 12 dads to the library right after the vote was made. So it was the following meeting. 12 dads showed up. I've never been to a library board meeting in my life. I've also never donated to a library in my life, besides paying my book fees maybe when I was a kid. Anyways, 12 of us dads showed up, cowboy hats, most of our 6 foot. And they said, okay, public comment. Anybody want to say anything? So we all lined up. And let me tell you, the liberals in the room literally needed some diapers. Trust me. Yeah. And I spoke first. And I said, look, and I named the 4 conservative board members. I said, never been to a meeting before, never donated to a library before. I'm going to make my first donation to the library today. It's not a lot, but it's enough to make a point. I appreciate your position on keeping this pornographic material out of the libraries and away from our kids. Thank you for what you do. Boom. Gave them the money, turn around. All 12 of us basically said the same thing. You know what showed up in the newspaper the next day?
What's that?
Organization called Love Lives Here in small town Montana, by the way, funded by George Soros, attacking us, accusing us that we came in with weapons and threatened them. Right? We knew we were on target.
Right.
We were just thanking them for doing their jobs. That's how ugly it is out there. So there's a lot of ways you can get involved. I'll end this portion unless you got more questions on this. I'm writing a book. It'll be out next year. Offline, we talked about Sean Whalen, the founder of Lions Not Sheep.
Yes.
I'm writing a second book. It's called Men of Strength. And it is a strategic guide to save America. And what I've done in this book, and I've got commitments from at least half the gentlemen I've reached out to, Sean Whalen being one of them that said yes, is I'm going to tell their stories in business, how they stood up to the norms in business and the benefits of standing up and how they feel about it afterwards. So Sean Whalen, if you know him,
Oh
Jeremy.
yeah.
He wears his faith on his sleeve more now than ever, which I appreciate. He's had a successful business pushing back against the liberal narrative in the country the last, I don't know, it's probably as long as he's been in business. And so here's a guy that's been taking on attacks for years, but he keeps coming out the other side, right?
Right.
And so this book is designed for us. And so he's in the retail world.
Right.
It's designed for people to hear his story and go, wow, if he can do that, I can do that if I'm in retail, right? And at the end of each chapter, there'll be, I don't know, 4 to 6 action items that somebody can take if they're in retail or just in general, right? So you've got people like Sean Whalen, Coffee Anderson, the music artist that sings
Right.
Mr. Red, White, Blue. He
Yeah.
committed to the book.
He actually lives in my neighborhood right here.
Well, you
Yeah.
go knock on his door if he didn't follow up with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, his
Yeah. I
manager wrote
got
me.
you, man. We actually went to Randy Travis. I'm friends with Randy Travis. We went to a benefit for him the other night,
Oh,
and Coffee was there. Coffee works out in my gym.
he great individual, but here's a
Yep.
guy in the music industry, right? That he's taken his hits for his
Yep.
political position, right? But yet he's coming out on the other side. He's always got something new going on. I reached out to his management about a month ago, and she wrote me right back. She says, "We're in. Let's schedule the call." Right. And so I want people to hear examples from different industries on how these men have overcame and how they took a stand and what action steps you can take. So
Yeah.
I know that's a little self-promotion, but I want people to know that every industry represents men of strength that have taken a stand for what they believe in and have come out the other side happier, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I mean this is something that you've definitely hit me between the eyes. This is something that's a very sensitive subject to me because I feel like Jim, in the past, us conservative mindset individuals think, okay, well, the liberals, they'll be liberals. Who cares? And it's almost like we've kind of not been timid because we're scared. We just didn't think it was important for us to be as bold as they are.
mm-hmm.
And I think more than ever right now, it's important for us men of strength to come together and say, you know what, I'm not keeping quiet no more. I mean,
Yeah.
this is something I don't have to bash or talk negative towards anybody else that don't believe in what I believe in, but these are my values. This is what I believe in, and dadgummit, I'm standing on it, and I'm not afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to correct myself in saying it's not the liberals necessarily that we're against. Okay? It's a socialist agenda,
Right,
which in turn is a good versus evil war.
right,
If you have any amount of faith in you and a higher belief, we're in a spiritual warfare right now. And the
absolutely,
reason why I give liberals a break is because by true definition, liberal is somebody that's a free thinker. And as
right,
conservatives, we actually are free thinkers. We like good ideas, we like good discussion and good debate, and we may not agree with everything that a true liberal definition might represent, right? But we're
right,
open to discussing it. What we're facing is a socialist agenda with a global plan,
right,
right? And if people don't see that,
right,
they are gravely mistaken. And I've got a lot of Democratic friends, and I said, look, guys, you know what? I'd take the Democratic Party of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but that's not what we're living in right now.
no,
And they have to understand when you got people like Elon Musk, right? RFK, and Donald Trump, who used to be a Democrat, all fighting for our freedoms as on the Republican ticket, because that's the only
yeah,
other ticket besides the socialist one. There is something wrong with this country that's happening that most people have buried their head in the sand. And we have to wake up and we have to be strong. And to your point, we have to start speaking up as conservatives. And God asks us to raise up, right? Rise
right,
up our sword for him, because that's what we're fighting for right now. This
right,
country was founded on biblical beliefs, right? And God we
absolutely.
trust, you know? So yeah, it's time to wake up. I'm pretty fired up about it.
Boy, I am too. That's what, like I said, I fall guilty myself, Jim, of thinking, well, I own a business. I have 2 kids. I have, they're in sports. I don't have that much more time to speak out and to make my voice heard. And this is something that's really been, I've been convicted about for the last 6 months. I mean, I hear all the stuff about Kamala and all this different things. And I'm like, okay, if I really don't believe that the country is going the right direction, what am I doing personally to make a difference?
Yeah.
And so that is definitely something, again, that I've been convicted about because I get caught up in my own thing, my own life, like I said. But it's not just about us going and voting in November. It's about what can we do, like you said, in our community, in our daily activities to make a difference.
Well, and let me give one more to do, okay? Because this is the cheapest, easiest one of them all, because I know we all have social media. Find a candidate that you like that represents true values. And look, I'm speaking to anybody. If you're a liberal or a Democrat or a social, whatever, we all need to be involved. You
Right.
can repost the candidate that you believe in represents your values the most. You can repost that on social media and say, hey, don't forget to go vote. Okay.
Right.
That's the cheapest, easiest thing you can do. And you can spend 5 minutes every morning doing that, and you will gather more votes for that candidate. So there's zero excuse
Right.
not to do anything. And Jeremy, I appreciate you being honest, saying that it's been a struggle for you the last 6 months and you're doing more, because most people won't even do that. And I got a good list of semi-celebrities are important people in this country that are going to be a part of this book. And other friends that I would normally pick, I'd love to have them, but they're afraid to say something because their business. The question I have for them is, at what cost? When
Right.
we lose this country to a socialist regime, you will no longer have a business. You will
Yep.
no longer have the freedoms that you've had your entire life. And this really is a reality. And I'm saying this from somebody that's been on the inside. When I say on the inside, not only from a school board perspective, but helping our local senators get elected, working with our governor, working with other elected officials, working with Matt Rosendale, who was one of the most respected congressmen until they ousted him in the Rhino Party. This is real stuff. I have real
Right.
live examples. And what's crazy is I'm in there's 1,100,000 people that live in Montana.
Yeah.
Okay. In one of the small states. We have the same sex crimes here. We have the same drug problems here. We have fentanyl here. We have the crime and corruption of any other big state. And what happens is, in a small state like ours, a smaller population, is this stuff rises to the top in a hurry.
Right.
It doesn't get to hide behind millions of people in your populace, right? Or all the traffic on the freeway, or all the commerce in the grocery stores. This happens in our neighborhoods. You're like, oh my God, I knew that person, or I
Yeah.
knew their brother that did the crime, or I know where they're talking about. I know the person that got shot, right?
Yeah.
It's so real here. I can only imagine how bad it is in places like Texas and California and everywhere else, right?
Oh yeah.
So we have a problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But again, we got to stand up now more than ever. I was talking to my marketing team, I own a nutrition company. We're about to launch a campaign, and one of my directors spoke up and said, "I think with this campaign, they're going to know that we're basically saying we're a conservative company that are moving in a direction and hoping that Trump gets into political office, and it's probably going to affect sales." And I said, "That's good."
Yeah.
If someone don't buy my product because I believe in these certain values, then that is okay with me. But
Yeah.
more than ever now, we got to stand up and say, this is what we believe in. Now, if someone buys my product and they don't believe that the way I believe, that is perfectly fine. They don't have to believe the way I want to believe. But as an owner of the company, I'm not worried about my sales based on someone not agreeing with my values.
Yeah. Well, this is what you're going to find in that book I talked about, Men of Strength. First of all, I started leading with my values in my social media about 7 years ago. I was transitioning out of the tequila company into consulting. And I thought, you know what? Screw it. I'm all
Right.
about Trump and God. And if people don't like that, if I posted something back in the day, it hit 200,000 people. So, that I was, holy cow, this is a big move. I've never looked back. I've had the most successful years of my entire career the last few years,
Yeah.
especially during COVID. Okay.
Right.
So leading with my values has always paid off. One of the examples in the interviews I do in the book is with my brother, Mark Taylor, trustee, board member, and former president CEO of In-N-Out Burger. Mark decided, and I'm so proud of him for this. I didn't know he was going to do it until after it happened. In-N-Out Burger is a faith-based Christian company. They own it. They own all. It's not a franchise. They own everything, and they put their Bible scriptures on the cups and the French fry
Yep.
boats. Everything's got the Bible scripture
I
hidden.
actually just copied that. We
There you
do that
go.
on the bottom of our energy and hydrate products.
Good,
Yeah.
good. And you know
Yeah.
what? They've been attacked for it. And I was there even back in the early 90s and we got attacked for that, but they've always risen to the top. They are one of the most successful fast food chains. And my brother says, you know what? If we're all about faith, we need to close on Easter.
Right.
we're open on Easter. If that's the most important Christian holiday, what are we doing open? And at the time, and I didn't work there. It'd been a long time since I worked there. I just was doing some math. I'm like, Mark, that's going to cost like $12 million for you to close one day. He's like, yeah, probably. He's like, but we're faith based. We're going to be closed. This has been a long time now, and they've been closed every year. And as they grow, just like Chick-fil-A not open on Sundays, they're leading with their values. We're not open on Easter. That's our most important holiday. So here you have a company making a stand for their beliefs, closing on a day that they'd make a lot of money, and they've only done better for it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, not only do I want to praise you for taking that stand with your company, I've been a big fan of Andy Frisella's, who owns First
Oh, yeah.
Form.
Good guy.
He leads with his values on his shows. He's like, I don't
Absolutely.
care, they can cancel me, I'm fine with that.
He's awesome.
So
Yeah.
I commend you for what you're doing, and there's no doubt that you're going to see the value on the other side of that. And the reason why I say this out loud, because I can give you accolades off the air all day long, is I want people to understand that this stuff is important, and you will be rewarded for taking a position one way or another. And sometimes we don't always see that up front, but it's more important than money. It's about preserving our future for our kids and for their kids, and this country that was created so long ago that's deteriorating in a hurry.
Yes.
So I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you, Jim, and I thank you for being on. Didn't prepare you for this question, but as we're talking, I want to ask you this question. I know you've accomplished a lot of things in your life. I mean, I knew you've been successful in life, but I didn't know at what extent till this interview. But what is the biggest thing you want to be known for? We talk about legacy, and that's something I've told my boys from the word go. I'm like, hey, I want to leave you an inheritance. I want to set you guys up, but the most important thing that I can leave you is a good name. And at my funeral, I want people to say, your dad impacted my life. Your dad made a difference in my life. And that's something that's always been important to me. But I know you've already thought this out. What's some of the things that you want to be known for when it comes to the end?
Yeah. And, it's normally be a tough question, right? But all you got to do is go right back to my values.
Yep.
I want to be known for a follower of God that helped promote his principles, which, by the way, who wouldn't want to live by those principles? I don't care what faith, I don't care if you don't have any faith. Who wouldn't want to live by those principles, right? Because treating people well and doing the right thing is always the right thing. So
Absolutely.
I want to be known for my faith in God and as the leader and the father of our family, because this country has a fatherless issue.
Yes.
And I'm so passionate about, which is another reason why I resonated towards your podcast here. I'm so passionate about dads being the leaders in their homes and bringing those values. I'm raising two wonderful girls, and I'm not saying that just because they're my girls. That's what people tell me. Your girls are so amazing. And I firmly believe it's because they're founded in faith, and I'm raising them as young women and treating them with respect as a dad, and I'm involved in their lives. So I want to be known for those two things first and foremost. And then third, that I gave back as much as I could and I helped as much as I could. And if I get those three things, I don't care what else is said. I'm good with that, right?
Yeah.
And I really do sincerely hope that I can push as much of God's blessings through me and on to others, including my kids. That I get to continue doing this, right? And so I'm leading with that foot. And I think I'm going to hit the finish line with those three factors being said.
Jim, you're going in the right direction, man. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on today's podcast and to align myself with someone that has the values like you and stand up and not afraid to stand up too. I cannot wait for the new book, Men of Strength. That I think that is definitely I'm a big reader. I love to read, have for years, and I cannot wait to get my hands on that book. And thank you for being a part of the Hard Truth podcast. We're going to continue to always bring value here in this podcast to other. I totally understand with what you're saying with the men. We've got to stand up not only in our community but also in our own families. And your kids are going to be a reflection of how they see you treat them, how they see you treat your wife, how they see you treat others. I've told my boys since they was really young, Jim, is treat others as you want to be treated, like the book says. And when we moved to Colorado, we had the principal called me on the second day, and he said, "Mr. Fouts, was you in the military?" I said, "No." I said, "Are my kids in trouble or something?" He said, "No." He said, "I've never had kids disrespectful."
Mm.
They say yes sir, no sir. They help kids that fall. They pick up things. They pick up trash with if it's not theirs. And that's something that we as men, we ought to take that pride of more of what vehicle we drive, but how are we teaching these kids to be men? How are we teaching these women or these girls to be women? And so you're doing that, Jim. And
I
thank you for
appreciate.
everything you've done.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And just for your listeners, I'll close with this: is we all need help, and we need to push our egos out of the way and ask for that help. And that's whether you're reaching out to Jeremy or myself or somebody else in your life to provide that support mechanism for you to be the best person you could possibly be. We can all help you through the values and the goals and the sustainability and the getting involved in your community type things. But you got to have the heart for it. You got to
Right.
think about what your why is and then go after it. But there's a lot of people out there. And by the way, I have a coach, Jeremy. I have a coach
Right.
and I am a coach, but we all
Right.
need that support mechanism
Absolutely.
so that we can get a little bit further down the road. And we'll never regret doing that.
Right.
What we'll regret is not taking action and doing something. So, I'd love to hear from anybody that listens to this show and please reach out and get help to be
Yeah.
the leader that you can be, right? In all aspects.
Absolutely.
But we didn't say anything, but part of the important component of all this is also being healthy. You're in the
Right.
nutrition business.
Right.
When I look at what's happening in this country and the stress that's been pushed upon all of us the last 4 years and what we're going to endure in the coming months, if you're not healthy, there's no way you're going to endure that amount of stress.
No.
So, make sure that you're exercising, taking your supplements and doing all
Right.
those things too, man, body and soul. So
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there real quick because it's
No,
such
no.
an
I mean, I
important
love it. I
factor.
tell people over and over, one of the things that I get, Jim, I mean, next to my faith, and my family is my fitness. And I
Mhm.
have different dads that say, well, I don't have time. I'm like, no, you're not making time. They're like, well, what about, I'm like, get up at 5 o'clock, get to the
Yeah.
gym. I mean, you're basically a selfish individual if you don't take care of your health.
Yeah.
And
100%.
you're going to see that trickle down into all those different areas of your life too. You're not going to make as good of finances. You're not going to have as good of relationships. You're not going to be as mentally strong, mindset sharpness. I mean, all those things uh, falls into place when you take care of your fitness and your faith and all the things that we've been talking about today. So if I'm in the audience, I know you're a business coach. I do not want to miss out on getting your book and then also staying in tune with your next book. What is the best way to make sure that they're keeping up with Jim Riley?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Jim Riley, Riley, Montana. And then easier than that is my website is live, life, Life, driven, driven.com, livelifedriven.com. That actually has my podcast on there, my book on there, my future book will be on there. My real estate practice will be on there. It's all there. Would love to hear from you. And by the way, I'm just happy to help. Don't think if you reach out to me that I need to make a dime. There is a business component to this, but if I can at least point you in the right direction, I'd love to do that. For anybody. So thank you for asking that, Jeremy. And yeah, what a fun conversation to have. And I appreciate you asking about my background and what I'm doing, because I think we need people to generate action.
Well, Jim, this conversation today is definitely going to help people generate some action. Thank you for everything you stand for again and giving us an hour of your time today, and cannot wait for Men of Strength to come out. Thank you guys for joining the Hard Truth Podcast. Share this episode with a friend or a family member. Don't forget to leave us a review and reach out to Jim Riley and follow him on Instagram. Thank you guys. Good day and God bless.